Hello. This is way too steep.
Hey Jade, hey Mike.
Hello.
Hey,
Hello. Long time no see.
yeah, yeah. How's it going?
Good, good. Yeah. Just came back from my first half of the parental leave.
Oh, yeah, welcome back.
Thanks.
First half though, you say. So you're kind of like
Yeah, I'm doing
taking
it in two chunks, yeah. And then the other one will be end of March.
that it starts or that it finishes.
No, so I just finished my first stuff, and it starts when my partner finishes her leave, so we kind of like stagger it a bit.
So your second half will start
Start
end
in
of
March, yeah. Yeah, like
yeah.
end of March, yeah. Definitely a bit sleep deprived. My Apple Watch sleep tracking is gave up at some point.
Fun times.
Yeah,
I hope.
I'm seriously, it stopped tracking, and then it resumed now, but then my average has like dropped, like compared to before. So it's kind of like okay, I'm just gonna think this is the new baseline.
Do we?
Let me ping Rita. Did she say anything in the Slack? Let me see.
No.
Let's see. That was me. I did notice OPA has released V1. I think they snug it in at the end of December. I just saw it in my GitHub notifications.
So I think the conclusion on that was to move to V1 and then enable that flag, right? And not migrate the libraries.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, let's move to V1 with the flag that I think Charlie helped.
Yeah.
I think the V0 compat or something like that. And then um, at least go to V1 so we get the security fixes and whatnot, and then think about the actual V1 stuff.
So upgrade OPA, but OPA the runtime, but
Yeah,
not OPA the language.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So at least we get like the CV fixes and any other things that we want to get, but not the language.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I added to the agenda just for documentation purposes. I don't think we need to talk more about it unless anybody has anything else to say.
No, I mean, the only thing to watch out for is if V1 has changed any of the parsing code for the headers, right? So rule headers, I mean, if you remember the Rego rewriter stuff, basically, right? That breaks if you try to do V1 formatted rules, as long as they haven't changed how their parser works. When it's in compatibility mode, it shouldn't be an issue, but should be verified.
Yeah, it looks like they also published a V0 backwards compatibility doc.
I very much doubt that this will be on their radar for backwards compatibility, but maybe. Oh, but this is like how to specify setting backwards compatibility mode.
Yeah, this is what we talked about with Charlie. That includes like the Rego package and then the SDK too. This is like the Rego new. Looks like that includes that. Yeah. So yeah, there's Rego, that set Rego version, and then Rego V1.
Okay, so you could set it on the module, or you could set it globally.
Do we want to do globally or on the module?
Globally is probably. Let's see, Rego new. It's the cheapest version. If I'm not sure how that would interact with someone setting V1 as a directive in their Rego code, but given that we currently fail to compile anyway with V1 style rule headers, it's kind of moot. We just should know that we're setting ourselves up to revisit this later if we do that.
Yeah, I think we'll probably need to do it in phases anyway, like set it up globally first, and then at least like we update to OPA V1. And then like the next step would be on a module basis, so folks can specify like V1 or V0. So the global one will be in parity with what we have today. It's just using OPA V. I mean the engine, not the language.
Yeah.
Can we
Okay.
do the bump? Can we like at least run it against all the policies we have in library? I guess like I'm just a little paranoid. Like something may break and until we've tested, we don't know. Like we don't
I mean,
know with confidence.
I think that
we could just run Gator, right, and those assertions, and that would be equivalent there.
But we don't have all the variations of policies, right? That's where the I mean we can I mean the library tests are Gator tests. I'm saying
right.
libraries are in the are the ones that can give us confidence, I think.
Yeah, I wasn't arguing with you. I was just saying we could
Oh yeah, okay.
create Gator,
I
and
get it.
then okay, yeah.
Yeah, we don't have a way to do like a custom non-published versions in the library. Because we only test library after Gatekeeper has published something.
Oh,
We don't have like a, hey, we want to test library with the main branch changes sort of way.
But we could just like once you build Gator.
Yeah, we can just manually run it. Yeah, not a big deal. Yeah.
or probably we can add a GitHub like CI test to test on library for incoming gatekeeper changes.
Yeah, that might be actually a good idea for maybe from the future.
I don't know if I agree. Like we're starting to get like cross.
Yeah, it does a bit. Yeah, like
those.
now we are like sort of coupling library with gatekeeper. Yeah.
I mean,
Look,
this is
oh,
a
good.
good test.
Like we're mostly just, you know, there's an abstraction here, right? Like Rego and OPA are an abstraction, and we're relying on them to correctly implement their backwards compatibility. So like as an ongoing test, right? I don't know if it makes sense to have circular dependencies across the packages, right? Because Gatekeeper library depends on Gatekeeper already. But as a one-off, just because this is presumably a risky change, I think it makes sense to do something manually here, just to validate our expectation that nothing will break.
Okay.
And we should, and I think we do have like basic tests in Gatekeeper, right? That test like some Rego and make sure that it's like plumbed through. That would be like the main thing, I would think.
It's more the keywords that we normally don't use that people use in the wild that could be problematic. Right? Anyway, so it sounds like we are okay with bumping, but keep the compat flag on, right? Okay, cool.
Do we want this in 319? Then I'll work on a PR for frameworks.
There is already an issue in 319 called OPA 1.0 preparatory work.
Yeah.
But I
Okay.
think that one has like a lot of stuff in it. This guy. Let me just put it in the meeting notes.
Yeah, in theory, this could be a patch release, right? Like
No.
this is almost, well, it's so upgrading OPA,
Theory,
right?
sure.
The CVE.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Patch
technically, yeah, because we did bump OPA before.
We
As
did
part of
what?
the patch release.
We did what?
We did bump OPA before as part of a patch release, say like 0.50 to 51, whatever.
Yeah, that's a patch release. A patch minor, sorry, minor bump. This is a major bump. You're going from 0 to 1. That seems a little risky to do it as part of a gatekeeper patch release. If I'm understanding you correctly.
Well, Semver is about compatibility, right? Like we wouldn't update Gatekeeper minor version for most of our dependencies. Like I am not disagreeing with you as to like level of risk.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and if we wanted to cut a release just to do that, whatever. Just from the perspective of, well, so what would we do if a CVE came out in OPA that was fixed by upgrading to, that needed to be fixed by upgrading to, like, I think it would be reasonable to call it a patch release, because
I mean, if we have to, we have to, but I really hope that never happens.
right,
I think it's just cleaner, right? Like I would like to say starting from 3 dot whatever, this is when data was introduced. It's just much easier to track. But I get what you're saying. There's always like corner cases. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'd also caution too, like when you say cleaner, that I think one thing that's never going to be clean here is the messaging, right? Because if people associate 1.0 with the Rego syntax, right? That's what they're going to hear, and that's not what we're doing.
That's not right.
Yeah.
So pre 1.0.
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance here. Yeah, it's one all, but not really.
But not really. Well, we could call it like pre 1.0 compatibility version of it, right?
Yeah, I think OPA V1 with V0 Rego.
Yeah, because we can't do V1 Rego until we have a way to support both. Is that right?
I think if we're in a world where we're like over communicating this, we're already losing, right? Like this is a library bump. If we try to make it more than that,
Yep.
People will be like, well, where's the features? I tried playing with 1.0. It wasn't here. So like, yeah, it should be in the patch notes or something that, we've upgraded dependencies, but it's not a feature change.
Yep.
Right.
It's basically depend about bump, but with an like extra line.
But in our docs, it was a 1.0 for OPA.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that
can
is
you-
the confusing part because we are the language and the engine are separate things.
Yeah, so I think we just add something in the release note and
Yeah.
call it a day. But I mean, eventually people would knock on our door to say, "Hey, I want to use 1.0 Rego things," and that's where we need to have a solution, right?
I mean, like I think that's the thing we discussed. Like, when do we say, "Hey, like we'll support 1.0," or when do we say, "Hey, why don't you use swap with cell?"
Ooh, that's a bigger
Yeah, like I think that's the
cell.
comms that we'll need to figure out. Like, I guess if an organization has already invested in Rego, maybe be
I think if we take the long-term view, the most awkward place we could be put in is if we support both Rego 1.0 and Rego, I don't know what to call the current flavor, pre 1.0 Rego. And then
zero.
OPA decides to take away pre 1.0 Rego from their most recent OPA builds. Then we're kind of left with no solution to offer users, Rego users at least. Right? Like if we never upgrades or if we never support the one syntax and they drop the V0 syntax, we can say, well, we're just no longer upgrading OPA. There will be CVEs. We recommend you migrate off of it, but at least there's backwards compatibility. If and say, well, migrate to this other thing or something like that. Does that make sense? Like basically, there's no way to support two different versions of OPA at the same time. So there's no way, if they ever remove Rego V0 support, there's no way for us to implement it ad hoc, unless we want to like fork OPA.
Unless we do some hackery. Is there a way to pass in the Rego version at runtime? I'm just looking at Charlie's example.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm not thinking about today's world. I'm thinking about, I don't know, let's say 2 years from now, right? Because of the whole like backwards compatibility stuff. And we've kind of moved beyond the immediate discussion, right? Because we're talking about like, should we support Rego V1 as a
Right.
language?
Yeah.
And I'm just highlighting the one potential corner we could be backed into, which is if they ever decide then to revoke Rego v0 support, then we're in a weird spot.
Right. In which case, I would argue we should follow, like, our dependencies. Like, if the dependency is not even supporting anymore, why are we still supporting it?
I mean, I think that's a
Well,
fair.
we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Yeah. But the immediate ask, though, is we do have to support V1, V2 together at some point. So,
I'm not. I mean, I'm not convinced that we do, right? Because there was the question of, do we just tell users to move to cell, for instance?
I think the
Like, I'm
only
not.
immediate thing we need to do is basically update the V1 with his V0 compat, so we get the CV fixes.
well, that one I think we already agreed.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
We're already good. We're good with that one. So I'm talking.
Yep.
I'm talking about the next phase, which is what if people start saying, "Hey, I need V1 syntax."
Yeah, I think that's the question that we should decide. Like, when do we say move to cell? When do we say, okay,
I mean, you can always start the cell, but let's say, I mean, again, just we're all hypothesizing, right? But if they're able to move the cell, great. If not, then what?
I mean, that then sort of your question presumes the answer, right? Like you're sort of starting with, well, we would need to support V1.
No, I'm asking if that comes, what would we do? We're hypothesizing the like the needs of the users, right?
Sometimes it will be not possible to say as well, right? Like for example, if somebody is using external data, how can we say that they are going to use cell?
Yep.
Well, so we wouldn't be able to use VAP cell, but like there's no reason why we couldn't write our own embedded cell functions that would reference external data, cache data, that kind of thing. It's just a question of would we ever want to, right? And with regard to like, would we ever be put in a position where we have to support Rego v1? There, I think the question would be like, define user need, right? Like, because I could certainly see users wanting to use Rego v1, but in order for it to qualify as a need, in my book, there would need to be some like functionality gap, right? Not necessarily like I prefer to write with the newer syntax because that's more pleasing to me. It's I literally cannot do this thing that I want to do. That's a gap.
I think we already had an issue where someone was trying to use V1 stuff, right? I'm trying to find.
Right, but that wasn't. They were able to write their rules still. They just weren't able to write it with V1 syntax.
So do you remember if they just ended up using V0 syntax?
I mean, probably. I don't know if they said what their.
Oh, okay. It's in that issue. It's in that issue that I put in the meeting notes. So it's actually cross-linked. So someone was asking about this, and let's see the code updating, but not just for regular V1. So this is 3577, issue 3577.
Mhm.
This someone was like, is Gator 318 ready to evaluate the Rego V1 syntax? Where do you see here?
Right, and this is just presuming a linear sort of like V1 as they were just assuming use the latest thing, right?
Okay.
I don't know, like this is not a given to me. Like I'm not necessarily against supporting V1. I just am kind of like skeptical of how long V0 would be supported in that world. And
Should we
the,
ask the starter folks
we've asked them, they're like, we have no plans to
to
remove
deprecate
support
it?
for V0.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, I think confusion is our messaging. Like, when do we say you sell? It's say, assuming we have the external data and referential all that in sell. So when do we like invest more in sell, get those capabilities versus go with the Rago V1 approach?
I think so. Anything that would work as VAP cell, I think it's sort of a clear best practice to use VAP flavored cell, just because then you get compatibility with that extra enforcement point. What's blurrier is things that will never be supported in VAP cell, right? And whether we want to make the investment to have a more like expansive featured flavor of cell, or if we want to keep sort of relying on OPA to provide that extra functionality. And the worst outcome in my mind is if we're ever put in a place where constraint templates need to be rewritten wholesale, right? Like that might happen. If we migrate to Rego V1, right? As long as Rego V0 is supported, like that doesn't happen for already written templates.
Yeah.
The question. Oh, sorry.
I think right now my only concern is if there is like an actual valid use case where they say, hey, there's a feature in Rego V1 that we want to use, and that is so awesome that I need to go to Rego V1 and can't use V0, can't stay on V0. In that case, Gatekeeper would or Engator would need to support both, meaning not force V0 people to migrate to V1, but just to be able to support V1 capabilities because it's not there in V0.
Or force them to a different language. But
Sure.
yeah, no, that's fair, and I don't think that exists right now. Like
Well,
this.
let me ask in that issue. Like I think you raise a good point. Like maybe they're just asking because they see V1 is coming, right? So let me ask in the issue, like, are there specific V1 features that they need for their policies? Or is Rego V0 sufficient?
Yeah, that's fair. It doesn't look like it looks like it's purely just rule header stuff, which wouldn't.
Right. And I think depending on the asks there, you know, actual V1 features, then we can punt this decision until then. Yeah. I'm with you in terms of not having to do the work unless necessary, but I'm also like just kind of trying to get ahead of the game here and not be like trying to scramble. Yeah. So yeah, so definitely like when we add V1, I think we definitely should have maybe in that OPA page, like where we have OPA version page, we can add a little bit of like a note that says like, hey, we bumped to V1, but not V1 Rego syntax. Like,
Yeah.
I think that should be sufficient.
I just opened the draft PR to update the 1.0. Let's just see what happens in CI checks.
Cool. Thanks.
It'd be just so much better if V0 inherently would be able to, V1 compiled flag inherently would be able to compile V0 and V1 code both at the same time on SDK itself.
I don't think it does though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Is that a can you tag at the Rego source code level?
Charlie's example, right? You have to explicitly tell the engine what Rego version that you're using.
Yeah, you could do that on a module level though, which would effectively, like, yeah, every constraint template would need to be cohesively V1 or V0.
Mhm.
Actually, not not even that. Every package within it, right? So we have like the Rego source code and we have the libs. Every entry in libs would need to be consistent, but you could mix across different embedded libraries. You would just need some hint, right? Pretty sure that's true that every library is a separate module.
Because I don't think we pass in the Rego version today. That's a new thing, right?
Correct.
I mean, there was no Rego version before.
Yeah,
Right.
it's all V0. Yeah.
So like if we were to do it, right, then each constraint template would need to pass that information in. And when we call like OPA to query, it would have to set the Rego version based on what's in the constraint template.
Right, but you might be able to do that. I think so. You could do it at the module level per the Charlie's instructions. So the question would be, what do we use for what? And I think everything is a module, right? Like every separate library is a module. Let me see here. So probably compilers. Parse constraint template. I'm just looking through the frameworks code.
Yeah, me too.
Oh yeah, parse module. And then also, let's see, do they have libs here? Yeah, so we're every discrete block of Rego code in a constraint template is a separate module. So let's see, what did we use for the schema for the libs? That would be another question. Like, where could we put hints? Ah, man, libs are it's just a list of strings, which, you know, we would need to do a bit of refactoring to turn that into something that we could. And we could also create like V1 libs or something like that.
Darn libs.
I'm just looking at the schema here. I'll paste it.
Yeah, you can link because I'm also looking at. I bet we're looking at the same code. Oh no, we're not. Okay.
Yeah, so that's the schema. That's where I was like, oh, you can't get a version hint, but so the parse module stuff is in this parse constraint template target code. I posted a link to the first call to parse module, and basically that just feeds a Rego string into this parse module method of OPA's AST package.
Okay.
So basically we're returning a module object, and it's pretty clear from Charlie's documentation that we could set that on a per module basis. So that would, I think, qualify for Jay's thing of like mixing Rego V0 and V1.
It's doable. It's just a bit more work.
Yeah. Like if we wanted to support V1, we could. As I said, it's just a question of like, to the extent that we need versioning hints, that's going to be a bit more work, and there's some like API level questions, and then there's the more like strategic question of what is the extra long-term risk we're adopting by creating V1. And I'm spending more time on it than maybe is justified. It's just more that
Yeah, I know where you're looking. There is hopefully enough value. Otherwise, why do we add it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's also maintenance. Yeah. Hmm. Unless there's like, oh, like V1 Alpha V1. Oh, sorry, Rego V1 somehow has like really major improvements or something.
Yeah, like you can now express complex things with 1/10 the level of code or something like that.
I mean, there must be a reason why they went to 1.0, right?
They wanted to make the Rego more readable, is sort of what their justification was in their blog, if I remember right.
Okay. And that's not a bad thing.
No, they pointed to situations where like maybe the interpretation of rule is a bit ambiguous, right? And so you're forcing users to be a little bit more clear by requiring some of these keywords. Like, I don't know. It's an attempt to address the criticisms of Rego that some people have.
Okay, well, let's wait, I guess. But I don't know, I just have a feeling somebody's gonna be like, I need this.
Well, I think it's definitely true that people might be like, I want this, right? The other thing that's sort of a question here is like, which comes first, the gatekeeper or the Rego, right? Like, and what I mean by that is, there's solutions that take Rego and generate constraint templates, right? And you have things like conf test and all of that, where they treat sort of Rego as the root entity, whereas Gatekeeper is more of like a packaging thing, right? And it wraps the Rego, and you have things like Gator that use the constraint template as like the UX box, right? And everything underneath is the black box. And so if it's Rego first, right, then intercompatibility is a major concern, and you're sort of like at the mercy of where the language goes. If it's Gatekeeper first, then interoperability is less of a concern, right? Maybe things like libraries, right, that are places, opportunities for shared code. But the use case of I want to take this Rego and use it in other spots that may be already using V1 is less of a primary use case.
Wow, I'm just reading old chats. Like we talked about V1 stuff back in 2024, like January 2024, like a year ago.
I wouldn't be surprised if all of this is like in those chats too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's wait and see.
Oh, it's funny that they added a lint deprecation. This is what it says. This package is intended for older projects transitioning from OPA v0 and will remain for the lifetime of OPA v1, but use is not recommended.
Oh, this is storage?
Yeah, I think anything that's like hitting the v0 path, because I just run Golang CI lint and then this came up.
Use the corresponding components in OPA v1. Storage is what we use for external, or sorry, for referential data caching, right?
Yeah, add data, remove data uses storage.path.
Where are you reading this? Oh, okay.
This is in the linter.
Oh.
So I guess they added a static check on the linter for the storage. I didn't know you could do that. That's pretty cool.
It's just like a comment they put.
Yeah.
Well, why is this in the K8s cell driver?
Oh, because we referenced storage there.
OPA storage?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how we cache. I'm looking at the code now. That is how we cache resources for referential constraints.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that
You're
sorry.
using OPA in the cell engine. That's so funny. Okay.
Oh,
So
wait.
does that mean cell supports referential?
No, I just noticed that you're saying Kate Cell, not Rego.
Yeah.
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 What?
So this came after we moved the cell engine to Gatekeeper, because we now OPA comes from Gatekeeper, not frameworks.
Interesting.
This is
So
because of the, I think, add data, remove data
Oh, it's using the path as
Yeah.
a type.
Yep. It's because of the interface, I think. Which I thought this was funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That comment stuff is pretty cool, though. I didn't know you could do that. That's really cool.
I guess because we have the library the import because of the interface, not because Solid is using it. Okay.
Yeah, it's because of the interface. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
then
mean,
the
just have to see it to confirm. Sorry.
yeah, and then for those that are curious, this is where the linter basically looks at this and it says sees deprecated, and then shows that message.
But does that mean we have to move the storage stuff?
Not currently, for sure.
But eventually,
I mean, we'll have to add a goal the no lint thing, so this doesn't error
right.
out.
But like, what does this mean though?
To be honest, worst case scenario, I think this means we need to change our caching solution. Which would not be a bad thing, right? So like currently when we do referential constraints, you need to have this like magic path name, right? Is where if it's cluster scoped or namespace scoped, there's a different path and it depends on kind and all of that. And it's kind of brittle. If we had a caching system that supported more flexible lookups, right? Like just think, grab a list of all objects from the cache that meet these properties, whether it's in Kubernetes namespace X or is of kind foo. And we had like a helper function, kind of like how we have the external data helper function. That would probably be a easier UX for people. And then like as a bonus, we could embed that in other languages, right? Because I don't know if you remember, but I was talking about right now, if we rely on OPA cache for external data, supporting external data in other languages is probably fairly expensive, right? Because either we need to duplicate the cache, which takes a lot of RAM, or write an adapter that somehow lets those other languages query OPA's cache, which at that point, maybe it's better for us to just have our own implementation and then we can control evolution. Yeah, and do like built for purpose things like the smarter querying syntax.
Also in their V0 compatibility doc, I don't see anything about storage.
Yeah,
Oh, it's not just storage; it's a bunch of modules.
No. I'm saying that lint deprecation message, right? It says that like don't use this anymore, right? Use some other API, use some other package, and then see V0 compatibility for more information. But V0 compatibility doesn't mention anything about like storage specifically.
I wouldn't be surprised if we were one of the only people to use OPA as a Python library. Or sorry, a Golang library.
Yeah, I think it's the OPA Go SDK part of it. So they have a SDK module now. So instead of using it like the storage whatever, sounds like what they want is to use the V1 SDK. I don't know. I think this is what I'm
Yeah, I think so.
reading. Yeah.
So maybe this is just the beginning of other things that's gonna get deprecated. Just watch.
But good news is that I think the CI is green, except lint, obviously. Yeah, all the build test stuff is green, so I think we are good, at least on the first part.
Yay. Nice.
Oh, wow. Okay. Actually, supporting V0, if I read what you're talking about with the SDK stuff,
Mhm.
they might be assuming that you need to keep using the deprecated packages if you want to support Rego V0, the syntax.
Oh,
They say for bundles, so it's not immediately clear whether that's like a bundle specific thing, but I kind of suspect not, given that it's applying it to things like storage.
uh, oh, most packages outside the V1 APIs are deprecated. Yikes. These constitute the older V0 APIs, which defaults to V0 Rego syntax,
Oh, that's interesting.
provided as means to ease transition to V1 for third-party integration.
Yeah, this is where I'm like, maybe V0 is going to be dropping off at some point. Like, I get that's not their intent, but looking at the trajectory of things, I am super skeptical that that will be a
This is at the top of this link. No.
I mean, I'm wondering if you were using the OPA as a library as like an unintended way.
No, they tell people to use the Go
Like
SDK.
the way we have been doing.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're not doing anything weird. But maybe
I like to think we're a little weird.
the abnormal has that. The older V0. But they're basically saying we have to update our packet or our like imports eventually, right? Am I reading this right?
Not, I mean, they say it will remain. I'm also reading one thing I'm inferring from what they've read, but it's kind of ambiguous, is they're like, if you want to continue to support V0 syntax, you cannot use the V1 packages. That gives me pause as to life expectancy of supporting both at once.
Right. Should we raise this with the in the maintainers channel?
I mean, be good to get clarity on,
Okay.
like, because worst case, like, in order to adopt the like putative fancy new V1 feature that comes along, requires dropping V0.
Right.
At that point, honestly, my answer would be no. Like, let's just move on at that point.
Yeah, and if you look at like the this deprecation message in OPA, it's in like a bunch of packages, like AST, for example. So it's not just like storage or anything like that.
It's anything without V1, right?
I mean, there's no V1, is there?
There's the V1 and the import path.
Yeah, the import path, right? Like we're not using anything V1, obviously, right? So
But that's the go V. Oh, I see. There's a V1. I see. I see.
yeah, it's at the top. The over
Oh, I see. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So I think we need to use the V1 ones. Interesting. Now I get it.
But then it looks like if you use the V1, you cannot read V0 Rego syntax.
well, it says you can, right? Rego V0. AST.rego V0.
I mean, we can also just bump the package to use V1 and see what happens. I mean, so V1 package with V0 Rego engine.
Sorry, what did you what did you suggest?
So, updating to the V1 package, the Go V1 package, but using the set Rego version V0.
Maybe. I don't know. Like, I don't think this is a one we're gonna sort out in the next 3 minutes. Like, upgrading Rego to the V1 version and getting the backwards compatibility flag set, I think that's a no-brainer.
Mhm.
But actually pointing at the different modules,
Mhm.
I personally would like a little bit more clarity
You
on.
mean Go modules, just to be
Yep.
clear.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
Okay.
Um,
Did you follow up? You want me to follow up? Anybody else wants to follow up?
So what are our questions?
The
So the
question
V,
is
yeah.
the question is basically what I pasted, right? Is we're if we continue to use the Go package, not V1, is it going to basically all like are we out of support in the future, basically? Because it says deprecated, right? But it says it's not going to be removed. But it also sounds like any new things is going to go to V1.
or is this the Golang thing of if you support multiple versions, keep the different subdirectories?
I think it's mostly that. Remember, we did the V3 sort of thing, so it's just like awkwardness.
Yeah,
Um,
like it wouldn't be required for V1, but like at a Golang level, I mean.
It might have been they only want to do the work on the V1 side, and then V0 is there, but they're not going to update it.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
V1 still supports V0 compat. This is like a go weirdness, basically.
That would be my main question is, does the V1 subdirectory still support Rego V0,
Yep.
the syntax?
Okay, I can ask that. I think I already had a Slack thread
okay, sounds
for
good.
that. Yeah.
But if you read from the top overview section, it also says V0 Rego syntax, and then it's like V1/AST.Rego V0, right?
Yeah.
So
My understanding is this is like a go weirdness thing, because like similar to like we had to do this gatekeeper V3 sort of thing. So
is it just we just need to add V1 everywhere then?
basically, yeah, that's basically what we had to do for gatekeeper. We had to add like V3 everywhere.
I see. So then, as long as we update to V1 everywhere, everything should just work for V0 Rego going forward.
That's my guess.
Okay.
We should validate the
Yeah,
intent.
definitely.
Yeah,
That was
sounds
basically
good. Sounds good. Hopefully that's all this is.
Yeah, hopefully it's just confusing.
But does that mean if like with V1, if V0 syntax is supported, then we can probably pass in both like V1 and V0 uh, Rego version and not have to worry about like supporting multiple version in constraint template framework?
Well, so that's a separate question, I think, right? Because we would need version indicators in constraint templates, right? Like right now, because of backwards compatibility, we should assume that all Rego is Rego v0. So then the question is, how then do we support Rego v1? And how do we let the parser know that we're giving them Rego v1 or Rego v0, right? Like there's definitely some kind of extra plumbing that we'll need to do on some level if we support both versions.
Okay. Yeah, problem for another day then.
Like if it's as simple as they could put a statement in the Rego source code, right? Like what they were doing before was like from future support v1 or whatever the statement was. Like that works too, but I am pretty sure they're not going to add a from past support v0. That seems like something they might object to.
Yeah. All right, cool. I think then we'll get back to this next week again.
Cool. Yeah. See you soon.
See ya. Bye.